Hello, everyone, and welcome to Republicans in France's latest video cast. We've got with us a special guest today, Stu Haugen, former chair of Republicans Abroad and executive of PepsiCo. We've also got among us President Paul Reed and Chief Media Officer Eric Spain. I am Antoinette Lorraine, Executive Vice President, and we're here to talk about the biggest topics of the week in the U.S., which happen to be the rioting in the U.S. I'd like to start with you, Paul. What's your take on the fact that it's getting worse every night? The fact that it seems like some governors want to call in the National Guard and Trump has threatened to call in the military. What are your thoughts on the situation and how it's being managed?
Okay, thanks Antoinette, and hi everybody, thanks for joining us. A big subject. I think what I'll do is just try to frame it in a few points and to get the conversation started and so the others can comment. And I thought that I had seen the worst of Trump derangement syndrome, but this week I realized that it's worse than I thought. From the United States to here in France and in Europe, how a lot of people are just really showing their complete hatred for Trump, their resentment for him, blaming him. I just want to set that up as a background. The resentment for Trump is kind of like an underlying factor in all of this. And I think that it's so important now for Republicans, for us to speak out, both here in Europe and in the United States. But to frame it in a few points, the first one is his death, George Floyd's death. We all agree that it was disgraceful, it was disgusting video to watch, and that this police officer needs to be brought to the fullest extent of the law. He has to be prosecuted, as well as the other police officers. One has been arrested. I think it would be good if they were all arrested. But the important point is that Trump he's mobilized the FBI and the DOJ to help in with the Minneapolis local police officers and enforcement to bring them to justice. So he's doing something. But it was vicious, and so we have protests in the street, and okay, it's turned out to be, peaceful protests are fine. We're all behind peaceful protesting, but they spilled into riots. They're no longer protests anymore, as we know. They're riots, and they become full of violence. And I would say that the people out there started with, there's all different types of people. There's peaceful protesters, but there's also Antifa, as we know, but there's not just Antifa. There's Black Lives Matter activists. So it's not just an Antifa problem. And then you have everything under the umbrella of people who just came off of two months of confinement or quarantine, and rightfully so. They're worried about their economic situation, and they're frustrated. So you have that, and by the way, Republicans were warning Democrats that this could happen. That's why we wanted to minimize the quarantine as much as possible. People are having economic problems now. People are justified in being concerned about police brutality and the racists some racists in the police departments. But so many of them are just taking advantage of the situation. And because of their economic problems, they're looting, they're breaking into stores, they're looting. Antifa, who primarily is, if you remember, is a white liberal group who are a bunch of communists who think anybody right of Mao Zedong is a fascist. So everyone is a fascist, and so they must destroy and kill all fascists, have no respect for life or property. They're just creating bedlam. So you have that, and it's gone off the rails. And a third point I want to make is basically, how do we get to this point? Because we have two camps in the United States. You have one camp that is like people on this call, and I'm sorry to say, but it's primarily right and left. You have the right who believes that the United States is not a racist country, that we have more opportunities for minorities than any other country in the world, and that this that we do have racists. We'll always, unfortunately, have racists, but we're not a systemic racist society. And you have this other growing camp, I think, that believes that we're a truly racist society, and that the blacks have no opportunities like whites do in the United States, that we're a structuralized, industrialized, institutionalized society of white supremacy. And I think my fourth point is, how did we get there? And I think it's because, yes, some people are truly concerned, but also because of the lies of the leaders of the Democratic Party over various decades. And I say decades because it started back in the 90s, but we got through the 90s, we got through the beginning of the 2000s, but when Barack Obama was elected, things started going haywire. We elected the first African-American president twice, but things started going off the rails because he kept instilling in people's minds that we have a systemic racist society, starting with that he right away in 2009, all the way to 2016. And I don't have the time to go through all the different examples, and maybe we can later, but lies upon lies upon lies. That the Boston police acted stupidly, that he called KKKs good people. He condemned all of that. That he called immigrants animals. He was only talking about MS-13. So there's this drumbeat of lie after lie after lie, and people who don't follow the news like we do every day believe what they hear. And the lapdog media pushes this lie, and unfortunately, you have a major division in the country, and that's some explanation for where we are today. And we have to, as Republicans, we have to remind people of all the things that the pro-Black actions that Trump has taken, which are unprecedented, and we can mention those later. But he's done so much for the Black community in terms of course, the lowest unemployment ever recorded, really addressing criminal justice reform, and what he's doing now to keep the peace. So I think he's doing the right things, and there's still hope for the society and for the U.S. as we maintain peace, as we get more and more Black conservatives speaking. I mean, don't believe us. Listen to Black conservatives that we can push their voices, who can talk about their real experiences and how great the American society really is for Blacks. And that should be our small part that we contribute to.
Thanks, Paul.
Remember, though, that if you don't vote for Joe Biden, then you ain't Black.
Okay, that's a different topic. Stu, I'd like to move on to you and how you feel that this this rioting and this violence, how it fits into the COVID situation with coronavirus, how all of a sudden social distancing and crowds and the risk of this deadly virus, how does this fit into the rioting? Like, it seems like everything was forgotten.
Well, I really, as much as I didn't agree with a lot of what I saw from many of the liberal governors, mayors, et cetera, and organizations in the COVID situation, I really wanted to believe that that their lockdowns and dictums were driven by trying to achieve the best outcomes for society. I think that kind of that goes out the window when you look at people handing out masks and praying that people at riots, sharing spit and spew and anger and hate, will wear them. It's kind of the ultimate naivete of a liberal organization to do that. Paul stole about half of my talking points on this, but I don't mean that in a bad way. He made a lot of very good points. And I would emphasize a couple of them. Yes, racism exists. There's no doubt racism exists in the United States. I would also share with Paul, I don't honestly, I was going to say, I have not seen systemic racism against people of color or ethnicities or different religions in the United States. On the other hand, somebody would quickly say, and I have to acknowledge, I have not lived or walked a mile in their shoes. And I'm sure that some people have faced a lot. I'm not going to argue that point. I think that right now what we've done though, or what is happening, is that minorities in America, particularly Black Americans, are being again used as pawns by political parties. And I have to say, as much as I support most of the Republican agenda, there are certain out there who are going to leverage any advantage they can. I mean, to add to Paul's commentary earlier about Obama and his supposed unity mindset, you know, we have to punish our enemies, referring to talking to Hispanic voters, and it's crazy talk, but it happens on both sides. Go back and let's reframe this. As Paul said, 80 days ago in America, we had full employment, in quotes, the best we've had in modern history. It was certainly the best we've seen in modern history for women, Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, every subset of America, including age subsets, so that even young Black kids were finding jobs. Wages were on the rise. And a cynic might say that that in and of itself is a recipe for a Democrat defeat somewhere down the road by Trump in a re-election, and therefore it can't stand. I'm not sure I'm that big a conspiracy theorist, but I would suggest that there's no question that people leverage every opportunity they have. I just saw something from my cousin who is she's not going to see this, I don't think, because she wouldn't watch our stuff. She's a nutcase liberal, a totally nutcase liberal. And she published on Facebook a list of Denver magazines, or some magazine in Denver, 100 top Black-owned businesses to support in this difficult time. And my only comment to that was, well, you know, we could split it. We could all find the Black list to support, the Asian list to support, the Hispanic list to support, the white American, or the Jewish list to support, or whatever. And all you are doing is creating discrimination incarnate. You are, by definition, establishing, instead of what business should be about, which is provide the best service at a good value, and you win. Well, no, you go support this guy because he's Black, go support this person because they're Jews. That is effectively discrimination at its core. And I think it's a really sad track that we might be headed down there. I mean, if you want to say support this area of Denver that got burned in the, you know, go down and do businesses in this section, or in this section of Philadelphia, work, you know, go there and spend money. I think that's a wonderful idea, but go there and spend money in Black businesses as opposed to Jewish. I think we're headed down a bad path. There are definitely two forces out there in my mind that are driving this. There's a deep-seated anger that's being leveraged by anarchists, and there's a lot of money in this movement somewhere, and someday we will find out, but the media won't report it in the general case anyway. So,
as you know, President Trump wants to declare Antifa as a terrorist organization. Apparently, legally, there's not a lot of.
Well, as somebody pointed out to me, and I have to admit, I thought it was. I think that it might be relevant for President Trump to designate them as a terrorist organization. I think you're right that it probably doesn't have any underlying legal impact, because there's already a law against terrorist organizations operating in the United States.
Domestic, yeah.
And somebody said, well, if these people had a brain in their head, they would figure out by getting on the bad side of the same mechanisms that tried to take down the Trump administration, the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, everybody, where's your money coming from? Follow the money, Follow the money, follow this, follow that. Who's involved? What are you getting? What are you shopping? What are you looking at on the internet? These people might back off.
This type of classification allows them to collect more intelligence information, to listen to
to
find out where
let's
the
see
financing
specific questions. I'll back off there. I see a whole bunch of good people being used as pawns by a much smaller group of bad people, to a certain extent on both sides of the aisle. Republicans, conservatives who want to say, see, that's what happens all the time. That's why we can't trust these people. And on the other side, it's, see, I told you it would happen again. And this idea that this was a racist action by Chauvin, the cop, it has a lot of credence on face value. But that's not, our society shouldn't be built on the fact that a white cop cacked a black guy, and that therefore it's a racist act. This could be a rogue cop. He has all the looks of a nasty dog, of a mad dog, and he's got a whole history. Now, I don't know that history well enough, but I just find, well, Stu, it's obvious, and these are people that I've known for years who are very, very bright. It's so obvious. How can you say the cop was white, the victim was black? It's obviously racist. Well, I don't know. Maybe the cop just liked to put his knee on people and choke them out. There are people like that. You go to a bar at night, you get yourself in a bad fight, and somebody grabs you from behind, you're dead meat. I mean, I am in no way defending what happened in Minneapolis. But I would make the point, it doesn't matter. Was it a racist action or the actions of a rogue cop who should have been prosecuted years ago? And by the way, the person who should have prosecuted him was Amy Klobuchar, who is now an ex-candidate for the vice presidency of the United States. That's all I got for right now. I'll be happy to weigh in on anything else you got.
Thank you, Sue. Very interesting perspective. If you want, we can, Eric, if you want to touch lightly on the topic, or if you want to move to media bias. Apparently, President Trump is trying to pass legislation to limit the censorship that is taking place among the big tech companies on social media and various other platforms.
Yeah, you get all these people who get shut up, like Prager University, you know, that's also on YouTube. You know, they don't say anything, they don't use any terrible words or talk about violence, but just the fact that they go against the politically correct makes them fit for being censored. Whereas you know, get Black Lives Matter saying kill the pigs and all sorts of things, and that like that, and they're allowed to be on, you know, or the Iranians who say destroy Israel, or I don't know what. It's all double standards, and sometimes people ask me, why are you defending Trump? Why do you like Trump so much? And well, I do like Trump a lot more than we did in 2016. Now I think he's the best president probably since Abraham Lincoln. And but I'm not defending him. I'm talking about the media. You know, I'm talking about the double standards, deux poids deux mesures, they call it in France. You know, everything he, you know, there was a Danish paper, the Danish newspaper, the most famous, Berlingske Tidende, in the first top row, Obamagate, with exclamation points. You know, and they said he's so silly he can't remember that is. The guy who's against him is Joe Biden. He's going after Obama all the time. No, I mean, all this history about Obama not having a single, you know, not having a single, what do you call it, scandal to his administration was all fake. It's been worse than anybody else, putting in the FBI, the CIA, who knows who else, against the Republicans.
Eric, let me just jump in on one point there, yeah. Because one of the things that scares me to death is the complicity of the media, yeah, and the degree to which they drive public opinion. And at the same point in time, if we completely undermine the validity and credibility of public media, then we'll all be victims to every idiot like you or me with a blog or a post on the internet. I don't mean nastiness to you, but you know, we are dangerously close to losing any anchor of true credibility in the news that we as individuals get. If you weren't there and saw it, and even then, there's a backstory you didn't see. I'm worried a lot about that.
Yeah.
Because they're all pigs who'll sell themselves for advertising nickels, and that's across the board. So I don't know where we're headed with the news.
So
Media.
So I think I learn more from the blog Instapundit every day than I do from the newspapers. Part of the problem is the drama queens, the media, the journalism is.
I thought you said Brian Stelter for a second.
The media is full of drama queens. They have to, to sell papers. They have to get melodrama about a story. And to sell it, and that's why also Hollywood they need melodrama. I always say when the founding fathers created America in the 1770s, they made it a boring place, which means a place without melodrama, which is everybody has equal rights. They have a gun to defend themselves. There shouldn't have been any melodrama after that. But the Democrats keep wanting to say all these problems that supposedly exist. Like the slaves. Yes.
Can I ask you, how do you think that the media bias has influenced the riots? I mean, do you think that there's also been a heavy bias in the presenting? Because as Paul said earlier, a lot of the rioters were presented as white supremacist Trump supporters.
Well, this also gets into education, where the education has been taken over by the far left, since the 1930s or whatever, and all they teach is how terrible people are, and they teach how terrible men are. We live supposedly in a rape culture. The colleges, they have all these rape stories for the past 20 years. They all most of them turned out to be fake, and they just thrive on melodrama. And part of one of Trump's biggest weapons is his humor when he makes fun of these people in the media or in the education.
A lot of people don't get his humor, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but we need to take back the education. Put it in the hands of local people. Not have a nationwide where nobody has anything to answer for. And we need to put it back into local schools, local communities, where the parents, when they see something ridiculous being taught to their children, they make a stink about it.
Let's not forget that the reason why the left promotes this division and all of this that you talked about, Stu, breaking people into groups, and what Eric talked about with promoting basically lies, is for a political agenda. I mean, what we're really seeing, if we're going to have a conversation, which the left always wants to have more and more conversations, but only on their terms, only if you agree with them. But a real conversation gives real truth, and the real truth is they've been trying to remove Trump from office since the day he was elected. And all of this is basically a coup d'etat. It's a soft coup d'etat. It used to be a soft coup d'etat. Now it's a violent coup d'etat. They are trying to they're trying to do everything they can to remove him from, it was to remove him from office while he was in office, and now it's to win the election for Joe Biden. And it's disgusting. They'd rather see the cities burn than tell the truth about things.
But you're right. It's just that there's a growing number of people who are revealing themselves as willing to destroy the United States as it exists, simply to grab power in the pieces that are left, because it will pad their pockets and they will feel good about themselves.
Remember Bill Maher, he's not the only one who said that we need a recession so we can win the election, And that reminds me of what was said. What reminds me of what was said when Bush was in president, when I think it was a senator from South Carolina, a Democrat, complained that not enough American soldiers were being killed and not enough people were going against George W. Bush. They thrive on melodrama.
Well, I think the important thing to tell our audience and remind people, in my opinion, is that the most dangerous actors in all of this are actually the leaders of the Democrat Party. They sit behind, like, they're still active. You know, you still have Obama, you still have Valerie Jarrett, you still have Susan Rice out there perpetuating this lie that Trump is a racist, that he called KKAs good people. I think that the Maxine Waters of the world and Pelosi and Schumer, they're the ones who are even more dangerous than the people breaking and looting, because they're with the money, as we know, left-wing money like George Soros and funding Antifa. Those are the ones who are making sure this all happens, that we have a powder keg that explodes. They throw fuel on the fire to try to win the election in November.
Okay, quick last question. We're running out of time. I want to ask each of you, do you believe that democracy is still alive in the US, or has it decayed under the upcoming?
We will not fail. It's gonna hold up. It's gonna be ugly, but I am a big believer.
But our state of democracy in the US, do you consider it still fully intact? Granted,
today, no, not when you can have Democrats pass laws or pass their own version of an executive order that allows them to do proxy votes without showing up in total denial of the Constitution. No, not on neither side of the aisle are we in full compliance with the Constitution, and none of the three branches are in full compliance with the Constitution, including the Supreme Court, which is supposed to sit as a non-judgmental, non-legislative, as a judgmental but non-legislative and non-executional branch, and yet has, under Roberts, decided in many cases to take over the role of the executive branch, or both branches, reinterpreting legislation to fit a perceived need to avoid a problem. They're there not to avoid problems. They're there to cut and dice, and then let America deal with the problem if it happens.
Paul, do you have an answer to the question?
Oh, well, I'm generally an optimistic person, although I may not come off that way. You know, I have a lot of faith in the democracy of the United States. I think we're going to get through it. It's going to be painful, but we're going to get through it. What I'm encouraged by is that Trump actually takes actions. You know, like all the other previous presidents would just give it lip service. He takes actions. He wrote an executive order to hold Twitter and social media accountable, to protect the voice of conservatives. You know, he's getting Antifa designated as a domestic terrorist group. You know, these things are really great, and I think that they're overdue, and I think that we're going to get through this. We're going to have a good election in November, and we're going to get back on track. And I think that when people when the blacks and the minorities see all the things that Trump is actually doing for them, hopefully some of them will come around. But because like he's going to hold when those officers in Minneapolis get thrown in jail, and Trump's going to be part of it, people will see that. And it's up to us to keep getting the word out.
Eric, your thoughts on democracy in America?
We do not want democracy to vanquish in America. It's a republic. Remember that. We don't. The mobs right now, that's democracy of a sort. We don't want that. We want a republic.
That's a good point, Eric. Actually, yes.
Where people are safe in their homes, safe in the street, and safe when they're stopped by policemen like Mr. Floyd. And we don't want people going around, taking our money either through mobs or through legislation.
Good point. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for spending this half hour with us and for watching. We're going to have a very interesting guest next week. You're not going to want to miss next week's recording. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.